everybody. Welcome back once again to the court of the Edijester with a somewhat serious piece today from a somewhat serious man. Before I begin, please do become a warrior teacher in April. If not, buy me a coffee, subscribe, comment, do the usual, put notifications on. Join my Substack, half price at the moment. There you go, $2.50 a month. Cheap as chips. Go on, help me out. I'll see you later. No, I'm sorry. Right, okay, get on with it. Dr. David Bell. Dr. David Bell has been a stalwart supporter of the nonsense of fighting the nonsense that you and I are so deeply concerned about. And he wrote on the 6th of March in The Telegraph this article that I'm going to have a look at now. So why I'm sounding the alarm on the next puberty blockers scandal. Now, what Dr. Bell is referring here to is the ridiculous notion that they're going to have some kind of study where they're going to experiment on children. Make no bones about it, ladies and gentlemen, this is gay conversion therapy by the back door, or as we call it in the trade, transing the gay away. That's what they're planning to do, is to trans the gay away. So we know already from what we've studied, what we've seen, that anybody who's put on puberty blockers, the vast majority will go on to take hormones, and then it's game over. Sexual dysfunction, atrophy, all sorts of horrible, nasty doings downstairs. So we know that this is a very dangerous arena indeed already, but it seems that our current government is absolutely paralyzed with fear in the face of these trans lunatics. So rather than just saying it all stops and banning the whole thing for everyone, which is what we should do because the damage is so bad. You know, people say, but adults can do what they like. No, they can't. I'm not paying for it, right? They want to screw out their bodies. They pay for it, and they pay for it. But not only do they pay for it, they need to have an insurance that covers their medical costs for the rest of their life. Try getting that. You won't get it, all right? They shouldn't be able to do it. And people go, well, people smoke. What's that got to do with it? It's not the same thing at all. Right? People smoke is like many things in life. I'll take the risk. People drink. I'll take the risk. People drive a car. I'll take the risk. That's not the same as I'm going to undertake a procedure with a 100% failure rate. I'm going to make myself a drug addict, knowing that these drugs cause severe problems when used on people. It's not even vaguely the same. Cut your nonsense. So he says here, the good doc, it beggars belief that after the cash review, we would even consider a clinical trial for hormone suppressant drugs for children. Few issues in contemporary medicine have generated as much controversy as the use of puberty blockers in gender-distressed children. David, with respect, I would argue that there isn't enough controversy. We still don't know. Until the Prime Minister stands up and says this whole trans thing ends, it's not going to end properly, is it? We're having to do it one person at a time, which is the only way it will end, if the truth be told. The government, responding to the findings of the cash review, has rightly banned the prescription of these drugs. Many other countries have too. However, the government last week announced an £11 million clinical trial of these medicines to gather evidence of their effects. This raises a fundamental question. Can a clinical trial of puberty blockers on children experiencing gender distress be done ethically? The answer, upon scrutiny, is a resounding no. Now, dear gentle viewers, I know that you will think the same as I do, which is the whole thing's a resounding no. Stop giving men hormones. Stop giving women hormones they don't need. Stop screwing with children. Get this out of the schools. Get it out of the universities. Get it out of government. Get out of the public sector. Get it out of everything. Right? What we need is a British Doge. That'll upset a few people. I have witnessed, the good doc continues, firsthand the grave dangers posed by the rush to medicalise childhood gender distress. As a former psychiatrist at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust, I was one of the whistleblowers who raised concerns about the practices at the now shuttered Gender Identity Development Service. You can go and see GIDS. I mean, I mentioned GIDS in my article the other day, The Truth About Gender Identity, which I'm sure you've already read. What we uncovered was a service driven more by ideology than by robust clinical reasoning. Many distressed children, often same-sex attracted and with autistic comorbidities, were put on a medical pathway to transition by some clinicians who had been captured by trans ideology and, as a result, cast aside ordinary sound clinical judgment and safeguarding, I would add there, Doc, and safeguarding. The adoption of a trans identity in a child is a safeguarding red flag, even though people like Manchester Council don't care, because I've written to them about what happened at Pride. They don't care, right? So even though they don't care, it doesn't mean it isn't a safeguarding red flag. It is a safeguarding red flag. He continues that a clinical trial risks repeating these ethical failures. I mean, these are ethical failures on a grand scale. It's not small stuff here. These trials are governed by rigorous ethical and legal standards designed to protect participants from harm. The foundation of these standards is the Declaration of Helsinki, alongside the Good Clinical Practice Guidelines and the UK's Medicine for Human Use (brackets clinical trials close brackets). They're regulations. These frameworks exist to ensure that the benefit of any new medical invention outweigh the risks. The Cash Review has made it clear that the evidence base for the safety and effectiveness of puberty blockers is extraordinarily weak and that their risks are significant. Existing studies suggest serious concerns, this is children, including negative impacts on bone density, these gay children, negative impacts on bone density, cognitive development, and future sexual function. Further, over 95% of children started on a medical pathway will proceed to cross-sex hormones and many to surgical intervention. Thus, starting any child on puberty blockers is freighted with that knowledge and, of course, the ethical implications of that knowledge. To be clear, the prescription of puberty blockers in the context of a trial would in effect, introduce a known risk of systemic physical harm to a physically healthy child. To put it mildly, this is a divergence from normal clinical trial practice. Like many other gay men who are older now, they look back and look at themselves and how fey and faggoty they were, dancing around thinking I was bloody Barbra Streisand. I'd rather be blue, thinking of you, on my roller skates. Or putting a towel on my head because I thought I was Carmen Miranda. Aye, 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 aye. And then I look at the young people I know, the young gay men I know, so full of potential. I look at them, I think only if they'd been born 5 or 6 years later, they'd be on the bloody the gay away pipeline. I hate these people with the very core of my body. I hate anybody who supports it, anybody who's part of it, with the very core of my being. One of the core principles of medical research is that a clinical trial must seek to answer a question that cannot be resolved by other means. Yet in the case of puberty blockers, safer research avenues remain unexplored. We should be conducting robust long-term follow-up studies of those who have already undergone such treatment. Like you call it treatment, it's not treatment. Such medical experimentation, I think, Doc, sorry. Qualitative research into the experiences of the growing numbers of detransitioners, and further animal studies to understand the biological impact of these drugs on adolescent brain development. Now, just stop it. Just stop the whole thing. Another major ethical concern here is the question of informed consent. Children under 16 cannot legally provide informed consent for a clinical trial of an investigational medicinal product, meaning that parental consent would be required. Yet, given the politicised environment surrounding gender identity, it is difficult to see how true informed consent can be obtained. For example, parents subjected to trans activist narratives claiming that refusal to provide puberty blockers increases their child's risk of suicide will not be in a position to make a free and uncoerced decision. The argument that puberty blockers prevent suicide is completely unsubstantiated. It's just a damn lie at this point. For example, a recent Finnish study found no significant difference in suicide rates among youth diagnosed with gender dysphoria when adjusted for mental health comorbidities. We've seen a very similar thing, haven't we, recently? 100,000 people looked at, and in fact, mental health issues and suicide goes up after somebody is trans. It's a red flag. The size of Ohio keeps getting bigger. I'm going to need to pick someone bigger than Ohio. It's an absolute red flag. In the UK, Professor Lewis Appleby, the leading authority on suicide prevention, has called for caution on the use of false assertions as regards the risk of suicide in this group. Informed consent is meaningless when it is obtained under conditions of misinformation and fear. There are moments in medical history when the imperative to pause and reflect must override the drive to push forward. Now is one such a moment. Given the absence of an established safety profile, the lack of high-quality evidence supporting their efficacy, and the well-documented risks any such trial would violate our ethical and regulatory frameworks, I think it's a crime against humanity. The medical community, politicians and regulators need to draw a line under this scandalous piece of medical history. Instead of experimenting on confused children with medical interventions that do more harm than good, we should be dedicating our resources to understanding and addressing the root causes of gender distress, researching psychosocial treatments, and following up on the 9,000 children who went through GIDS. Let us not repeat the mistakes of the past. Dr. Deobel is a retired consultant psychiatrist and was a governor of the Tavistock and Portmont NHS Foundation. Trust. I don't want these people I just don't want these people anywhere near children, or I don't want any of this to go on at all. Stop talking about gender distress. Gender is nonsense. It's something else. It's just get the word gender out of our damn vocabulary. That'd be a bloody good start. Anyway, go do your thing. If you want to read it, the links are in the doobers as usual. Buy me a coffee, whatever it may be. Please help me keep going by becoming a warrior teacher. I'll catch up with you later. Ta-da.